On this day in history, November 3rd, 361, Emperor Constantius II dies of a fever at Mopsuestia in Cilicia. On his deathbed, he is baptized and declares his cousin Julian rightful successor. Included in the following is a brief excerpt from the 1944 edition of the Encyclopaedia Britannica, going over the early life and campaigns of Julian. A short visit to Constantinople was followed by exile to Nicomedia again, where he came under the influence of Libanius, though forbidden to attend his lectures, and at this stage probably became finally contracted to paganism. In 531, Gallus was made Caesar, and Julian liberated, but not for long. In 354, Gallus was executed for misgovernment, and Julian came under suspicion again. He was confined in Milan, released, recalled to Milan, and eventually, and by the intercession of the Empress Eusebia, allowed to return to Athens. Here he was introduced into Mithraism, 355. The Emperor Constantius and Julian were now the sole surviving male members of the family of Constantine, and as the emperor again felt himself oppressed by the cares of government, there was no alternative but to call Julian to his assistance. At the instance of the empress, he was summoned to Milan, where Constantius bestowed upon him the head of his sister Helena, together with the title of Caesar and the government of Gaul. A task of extreme difficulty awaited him beyond the Alps. During recent troubles, the Alemanni and other German tribes had crossed the Rhine. They had burned many flourishing cities and extended their ravages far into the interior of Gaul. The internal government of the provinces had also fallen into great confusion. In his first campaign, in 356, he cooperated with Constantius, who advanced from Raetia, while Julian moved up the left bank of the Rhine. The only notable fighting was Julian's successful defense of Sens at the end of the year. The next year he was by himself. Barbatio, left to support him with a large force, deserted, and Julian extricated himself from great danger with a great victory at Strasbourg, 357. This season saw the lower Rhine cleared as well. The year 358 was devoted to the recovery of the captures from Gaul beyond the Rhine and the reorganization of the frontier defenses. In Gaul, Julian rebuilt the cities which had been laid waste, re-established the administration on a just and secure footing, and, as far as possible, lightened the taxes which weighed so heavily on the poor provincials. Paris was the usual residence of Julian during his government of Gaul, and his name has become inseparably associated with the early history of the city. Meanwhile, the inner circle of Constantius's court were doing their best to poison the emperor's mind against Julian. In 360 he received the emperor's orders withdrawing a number of troops for the renewed war with Persia, was putting them at once under a different command. Julian first objected, then submitted. The soldiers themselves halted at Paris on the way east and proclaimed him emperor. He accepted, and at once tried to negotiate with Constantius, who was campaigning in the east. The message being disregarded, both sides prepared for a decisive struggle. After a march of unexampled rapidity through the Black Forest and down the Danube, Julian reached Sirmium, and he was on the way to Constantinople when he received news of the death of Constantius, who had set out from Syria to meet him at Mopsuestia in Cilicia, November 3rd, 361. Without further trouble, Julian found himself everywhere acknowledged the sole ruler of the Roman Empire. It is even asserted that Constantius himself, on his deathbed, had designated him his successor. Julian entered Constantinople on December 11th, 361.